church today. My name's Amy. I'm one of the pastors here. And we have a fantastic man preaching today. So some of you, most of you will probably know Pastor Kaz, who is here. This is her son, Luke. And Luke is married to Hannah, and they have 3 gorgeous kiddies. And Hannah's dad is Chris Dole, who was a pastor in our city for a long time. And her dad actually was hugely instrumental for Andrew and I when we were learning to prophesy years and years ago, maybe 12, 13 years ago when we lived here. So they're a very special couple in this place, and they moved back to the Bay pretty recently, and it is such a treat to have you speak today. So let's give them a huge hand and welcome Luke Leadbetter. You got this.
Just grab the stand. Thanks for that introduction. That was oh, fancy one. Ooh, upgrade. Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. That was really kind. I realise that a lot of people here probably don't know me. So, like Amy said, I am a pastor's kid. I didn't grow up as a pastor's kid. It was actually I was 26 or 27 when Mum became a pastor, but I still claim the title. So, it was quite funny for me actually when I came back to Napier and I found that my mum actually had a lot of different aliases. You guys all know her as Pastor Kaz or Kaz. I found out about a month ago that the youth group knows her as the Kazler, which I thought was pretty cool. Then I found out that Mark Wilson knows her as the Engaged Church Director of IT, which is hilarious. But to me, I love you. You'll always just be Karen. That's out of the way. You can't be a good son unless you make a little bit of fun at your mum. But I was telling the truth earlier. I do need to introduce myself a little bit. Because today's message is going to be sort of half teaching, half testimony. And to make that half testimony sort of make sense, you need a little bit of context of who I was. So my family and I moved down to Napier, came back home in January this year. The previous 10 years I'd spent in the New Zealand Defence Force. I was a Navy diver. I specialised and became a land-based bomb disposal team leader. I was seconded to the SAS for a few years and then went back to the Navy. When I got back to the Navy, I specialised further and became a maritime bomb disposal team leader and a diving supervisor. These opportunities, this afforded me a lot of opportunities to travel the world, and I led exercises and operations everywhere. I, even on 2 occasions, got to go over to Europe and represent New Zealand for NATO and advise Tier 1 Special Forces on bomb disposal techniques, which was pretty cool. A lot of people, when they hear that, they think you must have had it all together from the start, that you were always able to lead or always able to produce what was required, always able to make the right decisions, but the actual truth is that it couldn't be further away from my reality. See, before I joined the New Zealand Defence Force, I was very foolish. I wasn't walking with God for years. I was quite weak to temptation, and I'd become quite focused on some sporting goals of mine, which made me focus quite a lot on myself. I was above anyone else. If you read Proverbs, you look at that character that Solomon kept on writing about, the fool. He was writing about who I was. On top of this, when I was trialling to become a Navy diver, you go through all these tests and psychological interviews and things like that. I was getting my final notes from the psychologist on who he thought I was, and he said that I had extreme scores in emotional hardiness. Highest he'd ever seen. I didn't know what that was, so I asked him, what's that? He described it as, imagine you're in a ship and it's sinking. You're trapped in a compartment and you can't get out. It's filling up with water. If you're someone with low emotional hardiness, you just sort of accept this is what's going to happen to me. You'll probably drift off quite peacefully. If you have a high emotional hardiness, you're going to fight to the end. It's going to be a painful way to go. He said, with your score, I would expect when you recover your body, you'd see every bone in your hand, wrist, and forearms broken, because when you found out that you can't get out, you would have tried to punch your way through the ship. When you're 23 years old and trying to become a Navy diver, you think this is going to be really helpful. Like, this is cool. You start to figure out, as I got a little bit older, and God started to work on me a little bit, but it wasn't actually that useful. See, emotional hardiness really dilates down to extreme levels of pride. You're unable to accept help from anyone else. You believe you can do everything on your own strength. You need no one else. You don't really even need God. Basically, extreme scores of emotional hardiness translates to extreme scores of stubbornness. Thankfully, just before I joined the Navy, I reconnected with God, but I was still foolish, weak, and self-centered. I came across and reread the verse Matthew 7:8. It's a verse a lot of people know. For everyone who asks, receive. Everyone who seeks, finds. Everyone who knocks, the door will be opened. I knew that this verse is not about stacks of cash and fast cars, even though I wish it was. It is about the kingdom, right? You need to seek the kingdom, and it's right there if you want it. And so I took that to heart, and I remembered things that had been prophesied over me in my youth, gifts that I was told could be mine if I worked on them. I'd run from those, so I was asking for them again. I prayed for wisdom, strength of character, and leadership. On paper, that sounds pretty good, right? So here's Luke's top tip of the day. If you're going to ask God for something, and you're seeking it with a kingdom-focused heart, ask for things that are not so desperately out of reach. I guess my story turns into be careful what you pray for. Because we're talking about ready or not. I was so firmly in that or not category. I wasn't ready. It wasn't that God was saying no. He has a sense of humor, so he said yes. I just wasn't ready to receive those things. I had to work for them. I had to train for them. Training is like anything else. You want to get bigger muscles, you go to the gym, lift your weights. But on a deeper level, what actually happens is when you put your muscles under the right kind of tension, the right kind of duress for the right amount of time, those muscle fibers actually begin to tear. You get lactic acid in the muscles, you get stiff, it gets sore, you start to wonder if you should really be doing this anymore. It's really hard to keep going. Above that, motor neurons in your muscles begin to develop and multiply so that when you contract your muscle, there's more motor neurons in your muscle, which means you can contract more fibers. So you're not just stronger because your muscles are bigger, you're stronger because the link between your thoughts and your actions have also increased. In my experience, training a character trait isn't really that different, especially for training traits that have never been used. It takes time. You need to be under the right kind of tension. You need to be torn at times. You need to be ripped. Sometimes it hurts, but you will be rebuilt stronger. The connections between your thoughts and your actions begin to align. You grow, you multiply, and at times you are facing fatigue and exhaustion. Your spirit starts to fill with acid sometimes. You look at the journey and say, this is too much. But then you start to see a little bit of a result, and like the gym, you see a result and you go, actually, I'll go back again. See, God's got a history of testing people, allowing them to work through difficult times and train that character muscle. We see it all through the Bible. When you read your Bible, how often do you see God tested his heart to see who he was? I think that one of the easiest ways to describe this would be the Israelites and their 40-year journey in the desert, and that's who I'm going to be focusing on today. But you do have to wonder, why do you have to go through hardship to grow? Why is it trials to become ready? And when we say ready, it's ready for what? So I'm going to work through 3 examples from Moses and 3 examples from my life on God getting us ready. So the first thing that he is getting us ready for is perspective. Deuteronomy 8, 2-5. You shall remember all the ways which the Lord your God has led you in the wilderness these 40 years, that he might humble you, testing you, to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. He humbled you, and he let you be hungry, and fed you with manna which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, that he might make you understand that man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by everything that proceeds out of the mouth of the Lord. I'm not even 40 years old yet. I could not imagine going through 40 years of trials and difficulty. But let's look at what happened in those 40 years. How many times had the Israelites been tested and tried and refined and blessed and experienced countless miracles and then finally allowed to fulfill the promise of entering their homeland? And then when they get there, they find out that they needed to do battle and fight and persevere. Because remember, 40 years earlier, they had stood at the entrance to the promised land, and then they had sent 2 men in to gather some intel, and then they came back and said that they saw armies, literal giants, and then more armies. So they turned in fear. Then 40 years later, after all those trials, they get back to the entrance to the promised land. Those enemies are still the same. They're still there. Those giants still need to be defeated. But God had given them a new perspective. See, all the generation that had run in fear were gone. It says in 1 Corinthians 10, Paul recounts how the unbelievers' bodies had littered the wilderness. The people that were left, the ones that were ready with the new perspective, looked at what they had run from 40 years earlier and thought, these guys are just in my way. So in 2015, I did this course. It's called Amangia. It's a survival course. It's 7 weeks long. You spend your time being starved and stretched. You go weeks without a meal, outside of a couple of scraps that you can find, even at times what you can find from a rubbish bin. You get desperate. The idea of the course is to pull the attendees down to the lowest physical, emotional, and mental state that they possibly can without causing permanent harm, and then put them in challenging situations, just to see not only how you survive the elements, but how you survive your own mind. See what kind of person you are when you shake off comfort and warmth and food and 10 kgs. So I'm going to skip to week 4 in this course, right? I am quite tired. We all are. I'm in this group of 7 people. We had just been dropped off in the middle of Wairau, middle of winter. It's -2 degrees and told pack march 26 kilometres in that direction. We get to our location. We've gone over hills, through scrubs, through streams. We are absolutely exhausted, shattered. We've got 35 kg packs on our back. We've got webbing, about 5 kilos on that, and then a 4 kilo rifle. We set up the night watch. There's enemy players in the area. You don't want to get caught out sleeping. I go to sleep on the ground. I get my shake at around 2 o'clock in the morning. I go take my position. I'm watching the valley below, looking around. There's no clouds in the sky. Stunning stars. There's a full moon, incredibly bright. It's brighter than I have ever experienced, and maybe just because I'm out in the middle of nowhere. There's no wind. It is just incredibly peaceful. I'm looking at Mount Ruapehu, covered in snow. The brightness of the full moon reflecting off it just made the mountain illuminate in such a magnificent way. I'd never seen something like that before. I've actually been on that specific mountain many times before and many times since, looking at that mountain, and I'd never seen it look like that. I just had this peace come upon me. So I was able to sit there and just admire the beauty, feel fulfillment, feel satisfied. In that moment, I started praying, and I didn't have any thirst. I didn't have any hunger. I didn't feel the cold. It's probably the first time that I can remember that I actually truly felt peace. So that time, that spiritual meal, it's kept me full for 8 years now. So a new perspective had been planted in my life. When Jesus said, "He who drinks from me will never thirst again," it's not words on a page. Like, I feel that, I get it, I understand it, I know it. But I had to suffer weeks of malnourishment and pain and exhaustion before I was able to experience that moment. But why? See, at that time, I was at war with myself. I didn't like who I was. I wasn't overly happy with who I was at that time. Everything I did, I felt like it wasn't good enough, and I talked down on myself, and I had a whole heap of negative self-talk, and I believed everything I said. I was at war. I hated me. So why this moment? I was so tired. I was so exhausted. I couldn't fight anymore. All those internal struggles just had to stop. I didn't have the strength to hold my walls up and keep God out. I had nothing left to fight with, so I just had to sit with peace. And it's an experience that I've carried with me. So here we see that God had waited for me to have no strength to fight him, and then he gave me a new perspective on his presence. He waited for the Israelites to lose the unfaithful, then he gave them a new perspective on his strength to overcome their enemies. So this is just some examples of God using trials to give us perspective. Right, number 2, God will use us to get ready for trials to get us ready for refinement. Zechariah 13:9, I will bring that group through the fire and make them pure. I will refine them like silver and purify them like gold. They will call on my name and I will answer them. I will say, these are my people, and they will say, the Lord is our God. Although this verse wasn't directly aimed at the Israelites at that time, this is exactly what was happening to Moses and the tribes. Think about Moses, who he was. He was a hothead. He didn't think his actions through. He thought he was untouchable because he was in such a high position in Egypt. He killed an Egyptian with a rock and thought he could almost get away with it if he just buried him in the sand. God couldn't use him to the full potential that he planned when he was like that. He needed refining. He needed humbling. He needed time in the wilderness, 40 years in the wilderness, it says. A wife, a tribe, and then an experience with a burning bush. All this time refining him from who he was to who he needed to be. I think he went from being in a palace to tending sheep. That's a bit of a career setback. But because of this refinement, he was prepared so that he could go out of the wilderness and live by faith and then walk into what God had for him, which was to lead the Israelites. During my initial training to become a diver, you do about a year of sort of lead-up courses, and then you get onto the Big Daddy. It's a 6-month-long course. It's just all pain and endurance at about 12,000 minutes of time underwater. They don't run courses like that anymore. A psychologist came and had a look and said it's not actually humane to treat people like that. We treat people much nicer nowadays. So at this point, I'm about 4 or 5 weeks into the course. We're way up north. It's middle of winter, so there's no people around. We've got our own beach. They take us up there so no one can hear you scream. We're on to our second or third endurance week of the course. And just for fun, they mixed it in with testing week. So for endurance week, basically, there is food, but you're not allowed. You don't get time to eat it. If you're awake, which is always, you have to be exercising or diving. There's no exception. Testing week, you get 2 tests a day, and we're told if you fail 1 test, you're off course. You start again next year, and you don't start 4 months in. You start on day 1, and you start the trials again. So the belief at the time was that you need to be in the worst imaginable pain and then still produce perfect or near perfect results. We're told constantly you're either a diver or a failure. At this point, we hadn't slept more than 2 hours in the previous 48. I was standing on the beach, I had my diving rebreather, military set on, and a storm had come in. It's the biggest waves I've ever seen up close. The task, there's a 200-metre long line that goes straight into the ocean. It's been anchored to the bottom. They've scattered 5 training mines out into the ocean. And then we get 2 pieces of technology. One was made in the 1980s, and then the other one is bleeding edge, state-of-the-art sonar imaging, GPS, Doppler navigation system, you name it, you got it. This is the Ferrari of mine finding. I pulled the short straw, so I got my 80s on. Unfortunately, we can't launch a safety boat. The storm's going to flip it in a second. So we're told by the supervisor, you either come back under your own steam or we get your body later. I look at the waves. I get told leave surface. I have no hesitation because I can beat the ocean. I can destroy this. I will succeed. Remember that emotional hardiness thing I was talking about earlier? I charged at the ocean. I took a couple of pretty big hits trying to get in, but I finally got there, got in under the waves and pulled myself until I thought I was deep enough. I grabbed the anchor cable, rolled onto my back, put it on me to hold me down to the ocean floor, grabbed my fins, unbuckled them, put them on, turn on my equipment, locate the first mine, hit the first one, hit the second one, hit the third one, 13 minutes in, 3 mines down, I'm killing this task. I have no worries. I've got 60 minutes to find one mine and then I get to pass. I locate it, I hear it. We've got underwater headphones on, you hear the sound. I think, judging by the sound of it, I'm about 45 metres away. I start swimming out to it. Something you need to know, all this equipment, because it's pretty old school, a lot of it is manual. And so you have a lot of ropes, a lot of lines. Some are 5, there's 4 lines actually. One's about 3 metres long and then it goes all the way out to 50 metres long. You've got to manage all these because if you have one rope that gets out of your hands in this kind of weather, you're going to get tangled up pretty quick. I start heading out towards this mine and then it happens. I get sucked off the ocean floor. There's no visibility, it's all sand and murk, so I can't see anything past my mask, but I know I'm a long way up and there is going to be a very fast trip down. Then it happens. I'm punched into the ocean, smashed into the ground. I'm like a bug on a windscreen. Just completely took the wind out of me, lost all my equipment, all my ropes. I'm spiraled and dragged all the way up this line. By the time that I finally come to rest, my left arm is tied to my chest. I can't move it. I can't break it free. I've got ropes around my face, around my neck, and one of them is tied a knot around my breathing loop. Breathing loop is very thin rubber. It's tied shut. I have no air. This is inconvenient. I still think this is achievable, so I get my finger into the knot and I start trying to work it loose. I think I can get it, then I get hit by another wave. I'm dragged. The knot becomes tighter. The ropes have tied itself around the anchor cable, so every time that the wave hits me, I get further away and the knot gets tighter, not looser. I start working, I can't get this. I'm gonna have to cheat. I'm going to swim to the surface, get onto atmosphere, breathe air while I sort this knot out. I'm going to be okay. I'm 150 metres out into the ocean in the storm. They'll never see me. I can get away with it. I go to leave bottom, but the ropes are too tight around the anchor. I can't leave. So now I'm getting pretty angry. I have only one option. I can't breathe. I have to get my knife out and cut these lines. When I cut those lines, I will fail this test. I will get off this course. So I'm pretty annoyed. I pull my knife out. I hold it to the knot. I can't see what I'm doing. It's all by touch. I start trying to cut the knot, but I don't want to cut the breathing loop because then I still can't breathe. So I'm trying to work away, and then another wave hits me. This time one of the ropes spins me around. I lose my knife. I'm in a bad way. I'm really angry. I'm on my knees. I have one arm left. I have no knife. I have no ability to undo this knot. I've got no air. I've got no sight, and I can't get to the surface. My body starts convulsing. If you hold your breath for a long time, your body starts automatically trying to suck in. So my body starts trying to do this. I've maybe got 30 seconds left. I keep trying to work at the knot, and I can't get it. It's not budging. So now I'm filled with rage. Not only have I failed this test and failed this course, I've now failed hard enough to not be able to survive. I wasn't supposed to, I believed I couldn't fail, and now here I am about to fail so hard that I'm never going to see the sun again. I'm never going to see the surface again. So here I am on my knees, and I'm filled with rage, knowing that I'm about to die. I have nothing left. I'm still working at the knot, but I'm getting really, really mad. I'm pins and needles in my fingers. I'm losing oxygen. I'm about to go out. I have nothing left except to scream at the top of my lungs. I don't have any words. I'm underwater, but every fiber in my body is screaming, God, just stop the waves! Do you know how desperate you need to be that in what could be your final moments of consciousness, you mindlessly, out of frustration, yell at God for a miracle of biblical proportions? Can you imagine my surprise when the ocean stopped moving? I don't mean like it got a little bit smaller, like the waves just got a bit easier to manage. I mean it went still. It was dead still, silent. There was nothing. It was like I was in a lake, no tide, no current, nothing. My fingers still trying to work the knot. Now that I'm not being banged around, I realise that actually every time I get hit, I'm getting further away. I move forward and actually feel that the knot can be slipped. I've got air. Still not moving. I'll take advantage of this. I start untying myself. I start making up all my lines. I get my equipment still working, start locating, hear the fourth mine, swim out, hit it, and then the waves start. See, I had a problem with pride. That emotional hardiness score, I can do it, it's on me. I will not fail. So what happens when you take a person like that and fail so hard that they would have died without assistance? I'll tell you, your entire identity is challenged. See, I'd found my limit. I believed I didn't have a limit. I was seeking it and hadn't found it. The only reason I tried to become a diver was that I was told 98.5% of people fail to achieve that, become a diver. That was it. That was my only reason. Now here I am. I'm not infallible. I can fail. For me, it was a head trip. You know, my pride took a hit, and it absolutely needed to. This was the first major example of God not refining me by fire, but refining me by water. And he did this many, many times. It's not like I had one or two moments and then figured it all out. He kept refining. I had way closer calls, and I have other unexplainable miracles that I could share. So let's do a quick recap. First, we talked about getting ready for perspective. Then we talked about getting ready for refinement. And the refinement being able to get us into what we need to be. And this is not an exhaustive list, by the way. So now I want to talk to God. I'll talk about God willing to test us to show us what we lack and provide us a reason to get ready for provision. I don't mean provision in the material sense. It's a little bit something else. Numbers 11:11-14. And Moses said to the Lord, "Why are you treating me, your servant, so harshly? Have mercy on me. What did I do to deserve the burden of all these people? Did I give birth to them? Did I bring them into the world? Why did you tell me to carry them in my arms like a mother carries a nursing baby? How can I carry them to the land you swore to give their ancestors? Where am I supposed to get meat for all these people? They keep whining to me, saying, 'Give us meat.' I can't carry all these people by myself. The load is far too heavy." I think it's kind of funny how Moses would have been taught how to lead. He grew up in a palace. He would have had aides and teachers and mentors. He was never going to be the ruler, but he definitely would have been put in a high position in government. But he was taught to lead by human standards, leadership with assistance from government and advisors. Moses had tried to carry the Israelites alone for so long. And then finally the weight of 600,000 soldiers and their families became too much. He found that he couldn't lead if he's the only one in the leadership circle. He had stood on his own mountain by himself for so long that he didn't know how to lead without others to support him. God used this moment, this struggle, to say, "Go and gather 70 elders from the tribes." God then took some of the spirit that was on Moses and put it on the 70 elders. Now Moses has 70 people to share his load. Moses would never have known that he needed this, that the Israelites needed this, if he wasn't under that immense pressure at that time, the right pressure for the right amount of time. I was provided with this incredible lesson in leadership. Like Moses, I came from being under pressure and maybe not responding as well as you should have. So we'll go back to that survival course that I did. We're going to fast forward from week 4 to week 6. Physically, definitely not in a better position. We get loaded into this truck, driven for about 4 hours. You never know where you're going. They keep everything a secret. They take all your watches off you. You got literally no idea where you are. They kicked us out. We're in a forest. They put us in our groups of 7 and said, "Follow the path. When the light runs out, follow the silence." We start walking. We start chatting amongst ourselves. We realise this is the 60k pack march. So in the New Zealand Defence Force, there's like a bit of folklore about not only doing the 60k pack march, but doing it under duress. And so you want to be the guy that says, "Yeah, I've done that." And so we're all excited. This is our chance. This is our opportunity to see if we can do this pack march under duress, under physical tiredness, and we can just push through and do this. So we're all excited. We get past the first checkpoint, the second checkpoint, sun's down, get to the third checkpoint, and then we're told, turn around, go back the other way. But this time, on the way back, it's individual effort. Do not be seen walking next to anyone. And we think, all right, 30 k's left, we all got this, see you later. And I charged off, I'm going to win. My group was the third group that was led off, and so I had to catch up to them and then overtake them and beat them. And I did it. I got out in front. I was charging out. I think it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. It was really dark. I was in the middle of the sand dune, walking along, and I look out to my left, and ages away I see the silo. I don't remember turning a corner here, but follow the silo. So I walk out. I hit one silo, next one. It's about 4 k's out of the way, and then I run into an army unit that is not a part of what we're doing. There's another unit there also using siloams to mark their path. This is inconvenient. So I've got to walk all the way back. By the time I get back, I'm middle of the pack. I've got to catch up and beat everyone again. So I start running. I run to catch up. I don't quite make it. I'm about 1 kilometre short. And I start seeing people come back the other way. So what's going on? I said, they're just turning us around. They're just going to tell us to keep walking all night. I said, I get to the checkpoint. Yep, ticked. Turn around, go the other way. So I'm going. I start seeing people on the side of the road. They jumped in a metre or 2 off the road, jump in their sleeping bag. They're going to have a nap. I ask them, what are you doing? So, I've done my 60. I don't need to do any more. I'm happy. So, cool. I'm going to win. I charge off again. Sun comes up. I keep walking for a couple more hours, and a truck comes and picks me up. I'm the last one to pick up. We drive for a couple of hours. They kick us out of the farm, and then they read us our results. How far did we get? One person made it 60 k's. And because that one person went 8 k's out into the middle of nowhere and back, he made it a long way past 60 k's. I was hoping for a pat on the back or someone to say, well done. I looked around, everyone just hated me. They looked at me with absolute hatred in their eyes. They despised me. It was about a day before anyone talked to me. Wasn't my fault. That's what I told myself. They're the ones that gave up. They didn't want to push. Forever they can say they made it 51 Ks or 52 Ks. They can't say they did 60. But then, on reflection, I realized that you can't lead if you're the only one there. You need to be able to assist others. I believe that if service is above you, leadership is beyond you. Leadership is about service. It's training others, allowing others to be beside you, not behind you. And again, I needed to be pushed and tested to realize that I had no idea how to lead. I had no idea how to encourage these people to achieve the group goal or the individual goal. I could have pulled them out of the ditch. Come on, man, it's just a few more steps, just another K. Just give it a go. I could have done anything. Instead, I'm going to win. And now I am not only not a leader, I have no one that would follow me, even if I was. So my provision here was the opportunity to fail people. From there, after that one experience, I reflected and then I set my path to understanding as much about leadership as I possibly could. I studied, I experienced, I took opportunities. I did all I could based off this one night of selfishness to make sure that I knew how to lead others in the future. Moses' opportunity was to see that he couldn't do it alone. That pressure, the pressure we felt, led us to become better leaders and share it with other people. Now look, I know that my experiences are a bit on the extreme side. They're uncommon, but the message isn't. I'm not the only person here who's earnestly sought the kingdom and made a request. I'm not the only person that wasn't ready and God is trying to make ready. I can't be the only person here who's walked through trials, right? We all have. We all have moments of doubt in the journey, frustration, anger, pain, wanting to give up. It's all too much. I spent years of my life in this place, all to get perspectives, to be refined, to get the provision of wisdom, and I'm still going. I'm not there yet. But what I wish the journey so far was easier, of course. But then, if it was easier, would my stubbornness have been dealt with? Would I have learnt to lead by putting others first? Maybe, but probably not in a meaningful way. So I just want to, as the band comes up, I just want to encourage you, if you are in this trial, if you feel like you're under pressure, don't stop. It might be the right kind of tension that you need at this moment. God is happy to meet you right where you are with what you need. The experience might be one more hard night away, one more kilometre down the path, one more crushing wave, one more moment on a winter hill. Don't lose sight of what God is trying to use this moment for. Seek Him and push into Him. Those hardships might just be the tools to build your foundation. Think of Moses, his hardships. They're what revealed and refined and reformed his character. I understand those people in the Bible who were pushed through suffering. Paul from prison writing to others, take joy from my trials. He knew what his trials were for. We know now what they're for. Doesn't make it any easier. I have scars to show the truth of that statement. But the training will prepare you for what God has in store. One day, that wilderness experience actually will come to an end. And that experience is going to get you ready for those bigger battles in the promised land that probably don't seem all that big anymore. Thank you.
I feel like I have to take a breath after that. That was exceptional and so fantastic, Luke. Let's give him another hand. That was amazing.